you know, who actually knows what's going to happen with all this conference realignment? I don't think anybody actually knows. I put out all these videos on a daily basis, just giving you what I'm hearing. But what actually is going to happen, I really have no idea. So today I brought on I consider a pretty good friend of mine. We met through YouTube. He has his own YouTube channel. He does some stuff similar to mine. So if you get a chance, check out and subscribe to JCP, the Outlaw of college football. And I'm going to bring him on now. Now, me and you have an understanding. When we talk college football, we don't hold anything back, correct?
That's right.
All right. So this isn't about, whenever me and you set this up, this isn't about me rubbing your back or you rubbing my back. This is us just giving our opinion, telling people what we're hearing, not predicting the future, because you and I, we're not trying to play God and we're not some fortune teller making millions off of telling fortune. We're just telling the people what we're hearing and passing them along. And things are so fluid that one thing that might be true today might not be true tomorrow, just because of decisions that others have made. What all have you heard today?
Well, I mean, everything under the sun, to be honest with you. Today I heard an interesting rumor that I haven't heard before until today. And that is that USC, not UCLA so much, but USC may be trying to block Oregon and Washington from going into the Big Ten, because they might see it as some kind of recruiting advantage. And that way they don't lose out as many recruits to specifically Oregon. Oregon's been coming down there raiding LA and California for a number of years now. They've been making a living off of that. And Oregon has basically been owning USC for the most part here lately. So I could actually believe that. I mean, it may not be true, but USC may be trying to block these guys from going to the Big Ten.
Yep. That I've heard that too, but like you said, we've heard, me and you both, we've heard hundreds of things on a daily basis. Before we go on any further with the show, what I like to do periodically is just remind people, please hit the like button. I don't know why I watch a lot of live shows and they don't remind people enough to hit the like button. It's not to give me a pat on the back or JCP a pat on the back. It helps the video hit the YouTube algorithm, gets it suggested more, and more people come and watch. So if you would do me the simple task of hitting the like button, it greatly helps the video. And if you want to support financially, or you want to comment to me or JCP, you want to ask us a question, you want to troll us, hey, that's fine. We got the super chat button down on your bottom right hand corner. It is that little $. Anything that you put in the super chat will be highlighted and put on the screen. I will read it, and if it's a question, not just me, but me and JCP will address the situation and answer it to the best of our ability. So earlier today, I actually made a bit. Well, dude, this is so crazy and so hectic recently that I've been making 2 videos a day. 2. 1 a day is tough, but 2 is getting out of control, man. It is getting out of control. So one of the videos that I made earlier was talking about Clemson, Virginia, North Carolina, Florida State, talking to the SEC. It's kind of heating up again. We heard that there were preliminary talks earlier in the week, and then it just kind of fizzled out and died down. And then I saw reports from Twitter, from a Tar Heel news outlet, North Carolina, Florida State news outlet, that Florida State, Virginia, North Carolina, and Clemson are for real in serious talks with the SEC, and they're trying to figure out a way to actually void, not dance around, not negotiate, void the ACC contract that ESPN has with the ACC. Now, a lot of people don't know how the grant of rights work. Basically, when you sign the grant of rights, you're literally saying, we're making money for this conference. So even if you were to bolt, if the grant of rights is still in place, you're not going to make money for the conference that you're going to unless you settle something out of court. So what I'm wondering is, do you know if there's some type of magical number that the SEC has to hit as far as drawing teams out of the ACC? And if you had to guess, or if you know, do you know what that number would be?
Well, what I heard from Andy Staples earlier today was that there is a loophole in that contract where if a certain amount of ACC teams decide to leave, then it will null and void that contract. So if they can get about 6 of those teams to say, hey, we're leaving, then that grant of rights goes away. And at that point, you're probably going to see the Big Ten and the ACC, or not SEC, the SEC and the Big Ten will probably come in and start picking the ACC apart. A lot of people think that's why they haven't jumped on Oregon and Washington, because that the Big Ten they want to branch down into the southeastern seaboard as well. So you may see the Big Ten go after North Carolina and Georgia Tech and maybe Virginia. They all got that AAU BS that they try to preach all the time. And then the SEC will probably go after Clemson, Miami, and they say the SEC may go after North Carolina. So we may see a bidding war over North Carolina.
I just got a message on Messenger. This is crazy. Like, this is off the cuff. I haven't seen this before, so I want to get your raw reaction on a message that I literally just got. You see in the comments, West Virginia guys saying, check your Facebook Messenger. This is what I'm talking about. He forwarded a message from one of his sources. Dude, I don't know if I believe this or not. It's very, very far-fetched. I'm just going to read it, okay? It says, source, Alabama, Notre Dame, and Boston College to join rebuilt Pac-12. I'm not finished. Hold on. Amazon to bid $475 million on exclusive streaming rights. What in the heck is that?
Did he say?
First of all, I don't see that happening. That's insane.
Did he say Pac-12 or did he say Pac-12 or SEC?
Rebuilt Pac-12 is what it says. If that would have said rebuilt SEC, that would be way, way, way more believable. But rebuilt Pac-12, I don't know about that.
Job. Sounds like a troll job to me.
Yeah, but I still read troll messages. I don't care because that's it's crazy.
Now the big thing is that Notre Dame holds the cards to a lot of dominoes, is what a lot of people think. But Notre Dame, everybody automatically assumes they're going to go to the Big Ten. But there has been rumors that Swarbrick, who's the AD at Notre Dame, and Sankey are pretty good friends. And when they had that meeting a few months back, I guess it was, about the playoff contract and going to 12 teams, and those teams just couldn't come to an agreement, it really pissed Swarbrick and Sankey off. So you might see the SEC, and I have heard that the SEC has made overtures to Notre Dame to join the SEC.
This is the big thing that I've been told, and I've actually been thinking over in my head that actually does seem very believable. So putting all the pieces together, this is what could happen. So they're talking about North Carolina, Virginia, Florida State, and Clemson going to the SEC, right? And maybe they have to grab a Virginia Tech and a Miami to go with them, right? To do whatever on the grant of rights. But I'm hearing that Notre Dame, for one, is on board with the ACC. I know there have been talks that the Big Ten's interested. Notre Dame's like, no, for now at least. So what I'm hearing is that NBC is interested in getting the exclusive TV rights to the ACC through Notre Dame. Now, that one might have something to it.
We know everybody's talking about the Big 12 raiding the Pac-12. But what they're not talking about is what are the ACC raids the Big 12.
I made a video on that today.
Good point. Would get your wish. I made a video about that yesterday. At that point, you would get your wish, and what you've been saying this whole time would come to fruition. You would have, most likely, if the ACC raided the Big 12, I'm definitely sure West Virginia would be the first target. Then they would probably go after either Kansas for the basketball portfolio, because they got a great basketball program, and then maybe they would go after Baylor or Texas Tech or TCU at that point. Maybe even Oklahoma. Oklahoma State.
I believe that those teams are really thinking about leaving for the SEC, and they probably will. But the caveat to that is people don't realize is if Notre Dame does agree to join the ACC and they bring in NBC with them, that immediately stabilizes the ACC, and then they can go out and get, an Iowa State and Oklahoma State, those Texas teams, Baylor, TCU, maybe Texas Tech. I don't know. That's really far out west. But they could even stretch all the way to the West Coast and grab an Oregon and Washington, and boom, there you go. Another coast-to-coast conference right there. So that one might have, some teeth to it, big-time teeth, because I've been hearing West Virginia, Notre Dame to the ACC for about a year now, and I've gotten dogged. And it's going to continue. I expect it. That's normal. So the thing that really makes it make sense now, because I was like, I'm going to back off this now. If the Big Ten's talking to Notre Dame, they're not going to turn down that money. And if Notre Dame goes to the Big Ten, West Virginia's not going to the ACC, so not going to do it. Then I heard, not so fast, Golden Blue Dude. Notre Dame's actually saying, we're not interested, at least for now. Maybe things change and eventually they jump on board. But for right now, this moment, Notre Dame is not on board with the Big Ten. So that leads me to believe maybe the ACC knew that the SEC was going to come a-calling, but their ace up their sleeve is Notre Dame, and then they can turn their attention to getting teams off the Big 12, maybe even the Pac-12.
Yep. And Cincinnati just joined the Big 12. Cincinnati would also probably be an interesting market for the ACC to grab as well.
Yeah. Well, the analogy, whenever I did the video earlier, the analogy that I used was I don't try to fool anybody. I'm a big wrestling fan. I've been a big wrestling fan since I was 10 years old. I like it, okay? Make fun of me in the comments section. I don't care. I don't watch it as much as I used to, and that leads into my point. Whenever the two big wrestling companies, WWF at the time, now WWE, and WCW were going head-to-head, wrestling was actually a part of culture. Like, it was cool to go to school and talk about wrestling. That's how big it was. And then, the WWF at the time, now WWE, put WCW out of business. And ever since, it's been super stale. Yes, they're still making a ton of money. No doubt about that. But they are, the popularity and the watchability, the amount of people that watch them, nowhere close. If you want to compare ratings, they were hitting 6s and 7s back then. Now they're lucky if they hit a 3. A 3. That's less than half. That's less than half of the viewership. So the comparison with wrestling and college football is if ESPN just wants to go around and stomping all the other conferences out, snagging the best brands, bringing them in, it's going to, not to the same degree as what happened with wrestling, but to some extent the same thing's going to happen. Because why do we like college football more than the NFL? Well, one of the big reasons is variety. You have way more variety in college football, and there's different conferences. It's just more entertaining right now. I'm afraid that if ESPN and the SEC keep doing what they're doing, it might bring down the value of the entertainment. Now, if the SEC comes calling for West Virginia, of course, I want them to go to the SEC. That's stable. That's where you make the most money. I love it. My point is, I'm hoping that if they keep doing this, that they let in enough teams to where it's still, captivating. You still want to watch it. You don't want to shrink it down to 20 and 30 teams. I don't think that's a good product for college football.
Yeah, they touched on that on 365 Sports. I was listening to them earlier, and they were talking about if the Big Ten and the SEC had a championship game only between them, that the rest of the nation may lose interest, and it may actually hurt ratings. Because with the NCAA tournament in basketball, the big thing is the Cinderella stories,
Yep.
And if you do that, if you only have like 20 teams in each conference and you have a championship between those two, that's only 40 teams. So you tell me that 83 other teams suddenly do not matter? As a matter of fact, those teams out there in those areas would probably stop watching just because they were angry that you excluded their university and their alma mater. And
quick reminder, what team are you a fan of?
Alabama.
This is coming from an Alabama fan. He's not thinking with his Homer glasses. He's not even thinking through SEC glasses. He's thinking through common sense. Now, we all agree the SEC is by far the best conference right now. I mean, the Big Ten can make an argument, blah, 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 blah. Our point, we're not arguing who's better than who. That's not the argument here. The argument is, will we want to watch college football if they shrink it down to 20 or 30 teams? I don't think we will. I mean, yeah, you'll have the best teams watching, but same goes for the NFL. And I don't know about you, but I would much rather watch college football than the NFL. I'm just,
the NFL has their own model that's been successful, but you have to do your own thing. And college football has always been good about doing their own thing. They got their own little niche. They got traditions, their bands, the fan support and the way people come out to the games and how they carry on. And like I said, the certain traditions that the NFL just don't have traditions. It's just a business. And I don't want this to just be a business. I'm an Alabama fan, and this probably would benefit Alabama more, but it would take away from the interest of the game. And in the long run, I think it would hurt the game.
Yeah. Remember what we talked about before this? Whenever me and you make videos, we're immediately labeled as, it's a prediction, right? This isn't a super chat, but I still I want to address it real quick. Welke says, Joey, there's a difference in doing it or saying it. Hey, this is what I think. GBD does it all the time. My sources. Whenever I say my sources, I'm literally telling you that's what was told to me. Does that make sense, JCP?
By the way, it's JPC. But anyway,
my bad. JPC.
I don't want to
hold on. Let me make sure the ticker's right then. Oh my gosh, I might have screwed that up.
I don't want to grill on you about my initials or my acronym, because you know how some of these people, they're just like negative Nancy's.
It's JPC.
When Gold and Blue Dude or anybody says sources, that means it's people that told them something that really don't want to be named. So for you to come in here and try to needle somebody and to grill it out of us, it just ain't going to happen. And you can call me a liar all you want, but I'm not giving up a source that they trusted me enough to tell me something. And
even if they're wrong,
even if I say their name, guess what? I'm not going to get no more information out of them. And just because y'all want to know who it is, you don't always get what you want in life. So, just deal with it.
Yeah. So let me clarify this. Whenever myself or JPC says, according to my sources, that literally means somebody told us this. That's all that means. That's not me, making a prediction. Hey, this is exactly what's going to happen. If it doesn't happen, then the world took a left turn that I didn't see happening. What we're going through right now, guys, is a fluid situation.
Well, guess what sources are? Guess what sources are? Sources are just like everybody else. They're human beings, and sometimes they're wrong too. So just because we quote a source, it don't actually mean it's going to come to fruition. It's just food for thought, and we're just trying to give that to you. So just take a chill pill.
Exactly. And whenever I do have a screenshot of maybe a major outlet reporting it, whatever, I share it. But when I don't, I'm just going by a source. And I've got, dude, how many sources do you got? I got at least, I don't even know, like 30, 50, something like that. I don't know. I gain a new one probably every day because everybody has an opinion. And that's fine. It makes for good content. That's the whole basis for what we do on YouTube. We want to make good content. So if I hear something from somebody, it doesn't matter whether I think it's true or not.
That's a rock.
That doesn't matter.
You sound like the Rock.
If it's entertaining, I'm going to do a freaking video on it.
Right. What's the source's name? It doesn't matter what the source's name is. Jabronis?
Exactly. I mean,
we're just trying to talk college football because everybody loves college football. So let's do that.
Exactly right. Quick reminder, it's been 20 minutes since I reminded you. So here's a fun fact that people don't realize. The average attention span of a human being is 20 minutes. So I try to remind people every 20 minutes. If you have not hit the like button, please do so. It is not a pat on the back from me or JPC. It just helps the video hit the YouTube algorithm, gets it suggested more, and more people come in and watch it. So please do the simple task of hitting the like button and do your part on growing this video. And if you're not a subscriber of myself, Golden Bluted, or JPC, the Outlaw of College Football, What are you waiting on? If you're a college football fan, then it is a must. If you're not a college football fan, don't do it. Run away now. Run away. But if you are a college football fan, you might want to hit the subscribe because that's what we do here. Now,
let me ask you an interesting question that Jonathan Lewis, my friend, posed to me. I'll run this by you.
okay.
If Notre Dame joins the SEC, what does that suddenly do to Brian Kelly? I mean, because he said he left Notre Dame to go to the SEC so he could recruit better. Although Marcus Freeman is handing him his butt in recruiting right now, even without the SEC logo. But if Notre Dame's got the SEC logo behind them, what's that suddenly do to Brian Kelly?
You know what? I don't have the answer to that. But what I will say is, you know what? If Notre Dame were to join the SEC, I think Notre Dame becomes very, very dangerous. People don't realize the disadvantages that Notre Dame has right now. I mean, they're fairly exclusive school. Recruiting is a bit difficult. He recruited his tail end over there at Notre Dame. I know they get a lot of the spotlight and shimmer and all that stuff, but in reality, I would say it's much tougher to recruit at Notre Dame than it is at LSU. Now, if Notre Dame joins the SEC and that evens the playing field just a little bit in recruiting, I think Notre Dame would be a seriously dangerous team if they were to become an SEC member.
And a lot of people will say, well, you can't do that because y'all call it Southeastern. All that geographical stuff is going to go away, man. As a matter of fact, they can
whenever
keep
people
the
say
SEC.
that, Texas, Oklahoma, and Missouri are not Southeastern states. So cut that crap out.
But if they want to keep that acronym, SEC, you'll like this because this is a wrestling reference. They could change the wording to the Sports Entertainment Conference.
It's not a bad one. See, a lot, and it's funny that you said that because I've been seeing a lot of conversation about the Big Ten changing their name just to the Big Conference. I like it. I think any conference that has a number in their name, it was not forward thinking. They weren't thinking in the future. Well, what if we went down a couple members? What if we went up a couple members? I never understood, the Big 10, the Big 12, the Pac-12, the Pac-10, changing back and forth, blah, blah, blah. So I would actually agree with the Big 10 just getting rid of the 10 and the big conference, and that actually sounds even better. Like, that sounds legit. I want to be a part of the big conference. That has a nice ring to it, I must say.
Well, the Big 12 probably needs to change their name, too, in some form or fashion as well.
Yeah, well, the issue with them is they already have the rights to the Big 14 and the Big 16. Just stop. It's dumb. It's stupid. Get rid of the numbers. And I know the Big 12s are a little bit different because they use Roman numerals. I don't care. I don't care if you use Roman numerals, regular numbers, Chinese numbers. I don't care. Get rid of the numbers.
You confuse the average fan when you do that. They don't know. They don't really realize what conference you're talking about.
That's a good point there, JPC. Hillbilly Skeptic, one of my all-time favorite names, by the way. Thank you for the $5 super chat. He says, it would be a mistake to go outside of the South for the SEC.
I don't believe
the recruiting advantage of the Southern climate and culture is huge.
We're all right. It's just like you just said. We're already outside the South when we took Missouri. Yep. Missouri's not in the South, brother.
Neither is Oklahoma or Texas. I mean, they're South, but they're not SEC. They're not Southeast. Once you get outside of Arkansas, Tennessee, and Kentucky, you're not in the southeastern states. But I kind of understand what he's saying. Kind of. I think basically what he's trying to do is maybe show the difference between the Big Ten and the SEC, and maybe that's one line we shouldn't blur. What do you think about that?
Maybe, but I think the Big Ten already laid the gauntlet down. Now they've sort of cornered the SEC by going coast to coast. So at this point, are we just going to stand pat and be bottled up and cornered into the southeastern or southwestern part of the United States? I think it's a mistake not to try to go out and get other markets. Maybe the SEC should go after Oregon and Washington.
Especially if their ultimate plan is to break off from the NCAA. If that is the goal, and that's what it seems like, it doesn't matter where a team is. If they're a good brand and they draw money, go get them. If they add excitement to the game, if they add a different aspect or a different, realm of possibility, as long as they can be competitive. And that's why I think Vanderbilt should be kicked out. If they separate and move on, they need to leave Vanderbilt behind. I know it's about academics. I understand that. Vanderbilt is in the SEC to help with the academic picture. But once they split off, that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. Whenever they split off from the NCAA, you're just going to take the top, I would say, at least 50 teams. If you go any lower than 50, then that's shrinking it too much. But I would say between 50 and 64 teams, you split off. Vanderbilt is not a top 50 brand, not even close. In your opinion, if that does happen, do you think that Vanderbilt should be grandfathered in like they have been?
Well, I mean, if things broke the way they did today, the way they did back in the 1930s when the SEC was formed, there's a lot of teams that wouldn't be in the SEC. And not just Vanderbilt, but Ole Miss and Mississippi State, they don't draw anything as far as eyeballs and TV market. So them three teams probably wouldn't even be in the SEC, to be honest with you.
That's a great point. And that leads me to my next point. This is why Clemson, North Carolina, Virginia, and Florida State, but specifically Clemson and Florida State, right now they're in the SEC making, 30-40 million a year, and they're having to sit back and look at a Big Ten negotiating a TV deal worth $1 billion, the SEC negotiating for over $1 billion, and they're having to sit there and watch friggin' Northwestern, friggin' Maryland, friggin' Rutgers, friggin' Illinois, freaking Indiana. The list goes on. There's a lot of friggin' teams in the Big Ten, especially. Now, I think it's a little bit of a different story in the SEC. I mean, Vanderbilt definitely sticks out like a sore thumb. Kentucky, historically, yes, they're better now, much better.
State. Mississippi. Have you ever been to Starksville?
Yes, actually.
Mississippi
back when
State.
I was 13, I think, going through to Louisiana, actually, yeah.
Mississippi State did win a national championship in baseball here recently, but
yep.
Overall, they just don't bring much to the table, man.
So if you discount like just super recent success, I would actually put Kentucky on there. Now, if they continue to have success, then they're fine. And let me reiterate, we are not talking about basketball. Kentucky is friggin' fine in basketball. We're talking about football. If Kentucky were to continue to prove that they can be successful, then I would be okay with Kentucky. But I would put them on the possibility. You know what I'm saying? So we have Vanderbilt for sure, Kentucky possible, Mississippi State, I agree with you, very, very possible. People don't realize how bad Arkansas has been over the past decade. One of the worst teams in the SEC West. Seriously, Sam Pittman is doing a good job at Arkansas, and it shows you just how good of a coach he is. But over the past decade, 20 years, they've had a few great years where they scared Alabama, but that's about it. So I would put Arkansas on there. Now, I think eventually Arkansas will be safe. I'm just saying for the sake of argument, comparing Arkansas to a Clemson, there is no comparison. Then we slide over to the SEC East. This is where things get really interesting. Georgia's safe. Well, that's about it. Georgia's safe. Florida's been, they've won a national championship, 2008? But they've been sliding down. But I would put Florida safe. But that's not an easy choice. It's not like, obvious to me. But yes, Florida's safe. But outside of Georgia and Florida, Tennessee, yes, because of their brand. But if you base it off of success, they ain't been that good recently. And then Missouri has fallen off a cliff. Kentucky, we already talked about them. South Carolina is historically a horrific program. And I know I have some South Carolina subscribers. Sorry, guys, the truth is the truth. The only time you ever won a conference championship was way back in 1969 when you won the ACC and proceeded to go to the Peach Bowl where West Virginia whooped that rear end. So South Carolina, man, you guys have got some work to do if you want to prove that you belong in that upper echelon. So would you agree with the teams that I would say potentially wouldn't belong if we're going by, the top brands, the best brands?
I really honestly don't think they're probably going to kick anybody out. I don't see it happening.
No, I agree.
But if it did happen, like I said, to me, Mississippi State and Vanderbilt would be the first two that would go, in my opinion. South Carolina, I'm sort of on the line with that because they have had some success in the past with Steve Spurrier.
But that's it. Outside of Steve Spurrier.
Well, and Lou Holtz. Lou Holtz was pretty good. Now back in the 80s, a little before your time probably, they had a little run with, I think that guy's name was Joe Morris. They were actually in the top 5 competing for the national championship a couple of years in the 80s. But outside of those 3 coaches, they haven't had really much to talk about either. So, I mean, if they're going to start kicking people out and they had to pick 4 teams, it would probably, in my opinion, be Vanderbilt, Mississippi State, South Carolina, and possibly Arkansas or Kentucky. But Kentucky's got the basketball that's probably going to keep them in the mix. Arkansas's basketball is pretty good too. So those 3 teams would be the ones that would probably go if they kick somebody out is Vanderbilt, Mississippi State, and South Carolina.
I guess the reason I said that, my point is this. So if that does happen and the SEC and the Big Ten split off and say top 40 brands, right? It doesn't seem right if they allow, Vanderbilt, Mississippi State, South Carolina, Kentucky, and Missouri. I'll leave Tennessee and Florida alone. Okay, I'll leave them alone. And then on the Big Ten side, you got Northwestern, Maryland, Rutgers, Indiana, Illinois, maybe Minnesota, although they've been much better. So they're all in. And let's say you leave out an Oklahoma State. You leave out a Baylor. I know historically not all that great, but recently they built a new stadium. They're doing really good. And if you look at their record over the past 15 years, they have a really bad year, like 0 or maybe a 1-11, but immediately they come back with a 10-win season. It's weird. Seriously, when you get a chance, go back and look at their records. You'll see like a 1-11 sandwiched in between 2 10-win seasons. It's the weirdest thing ever. But you'll be leaving them out. You'll be leaving possibly an Oregon out, a Washington out, a lot of I'm trying to leave my team out because I know people will call it homerism, but a West Virginia out, a lot of brands that would be better than your Vanderbilt, than, your Mississippi State, than your Missouri, than Rutgers, Northwestern, Illinois, Indiana, Maryland, all that stuff. So that would be my argument is if you are truly taking the top fill in the blank number of teams and splitting off from the NCAA, then just make sure it's the top 50 brands and don't grandfather the low-hanging fruit in. That would be my only argument for that.
Well, there's
whatever number it is.
In my opinion, that if you're going to go by strictly the top 40 or 50, you could sort of use an NCAA basketball tournament analogy that they say, they're going by the complete picture, the whole season. Well, this would be going by the complete picture as far as an entire history of a program. And going on history alone, your team is a good case in point. West Virginia is 15th all time in wins. And I know that's much better than Vanderbilt or Mississippi State or even Ole Miss or maybe even Arkansas.
Well, here's the big picture argument for West Virginia if they were to do that. Like you just said, top 15 in total wins, top 25 in winning percentage in football, top 25 in winning percentage in basketball, top 25 in total wins in basketball. Only Notre Dame and Texas can say that. Fan base size, number 30 in the nation. So if you're going by top 40, top 50, there is no argument against West Virginia. I know we get a lot of shade thrown on us. We've never won a national championship, but we've been close. The problem with West Virginia not winning a national championship is we just don't get there often enough. If you look at teams that have won a national championship, it's because they keep getting there. Look at Clemson. Did they win it the first time? No. They got there multiple times, and it was their second go-around that they actually won it. With West Virginia, we only get to the national championship once in a blue moon. So it's like, this is our only shot. If we miss, we got to wait another 20 years before we have another shot. You know what I'm saying? Because we had 1988, we went undefeated, got to the national championship. Major Harris gets hurt in the first quarter, and I'm not making excuses. It's part of the game. Notre Dame beats West Virginia for the national championship. 1993, we go undefeated. They put in Florida State, who had one loss, over West Virginia to play Nebraska for the national championship. Florida State gets beat by Nebraska. And West Virginia flat out didn't show up against Florida because if you watch the interview after we beat Boston College, our coach said, hey, if we're not in the national championship, you're going to have to break us out of jail. Their minds weren't in it. We got blown out. And then 2007, of course, we got close again, but stinking Pitt got in our way and we tripped up 13-9. So we've been close, very, very close, but we haven't been there consistently enough to actually win one. It's like, West Virginia, you have a chance to win a national championship once every 20 years. Don't blow it. But every time we've blown it. We have to get there more consistently to actually win a national championship. But overall success, like you said, top 15 total wins, top 25 winning percentage, basketball, top 25 total wins, top 25 winning percentage. We have success. It's just winning the big one. And that's why winning the 2006 Sugar Bowl over Georgia was a big deal for West Virginia. We were used to getting to that. We were used to getting to that bowl, to that game, but we weren't used to winning it. So it was a big deal that we finally won it. Not that we finally got there. We've been there. That's no big deal. It's actually winning it that we couldn't accomplish.
But y'all also blew out Clemson in a major bowl as well.
Yes, but that was afterwards. Like the first one, and this was when I was still working at Pepsi. That's when I officially became addicted to Pepsi. I worked for Pepsi for 3 years. Not a lot of people know that. But that was I think the second year that I was working at Pepsi, and I literally had a $100 bet with the dude. He took Georgia. I took West Virginia, of course. He welched on me. I ended up with a keychain, a West Virginia keychain, which I still have to this day. I'm not going to say his real name because that's not how I am, but he did welch on me. Never forget that. But that was it was a fun time, and it was a night. Of course, it was a weeknight, so I had to work the next day, right? And I was like, man, I really don't want to have to stay up till 2 a.m. and then have to wake up 5:30 so I can get to my first stop on time. So we start blowing them out 28-0. I was like, all right, good. I can go to bed. And we'll still win. And then all of a sudden, I hear my family, oh, no. I was like, crap. Sure enough, Georgia had come back, and it came down to a fake field goal. But still, the happiness, the jumping around that we did, I'm glad that I stayed up to watch that. That was a big, big, big deal for West Virginia.
I'll tell you another thing. I get tired of the excuses about the academics and the AAU. That's all very naive of people. Because we all know what this is about. It's about money. I know some of these institutions have big endowments for their academics. They don't need sports, but that's not the norm. The academics, I was arguing with this guy that's probably on your channel. His name is Lord Rayburn. I think he's an Arkansas fan. And he was talking about, well, that's why conferences aren't just about sports. But they are. Conferences are formed on the basis of sports, not on academics.
Hey, hold on 1 second. I made a mistake. I said fake field goal, fake punt. I'm getting roasted in the comments because I said fake field goal instead of a punt. It was a fake punt. Yes, we all know. Sorry. Continue.
That's all good. But the academics, you don't see. The SEC wasn't formed based on academics. It was based on sports, on all the sports involved, from basketball, football, to volleyball. Conferences are not formed upon academics. You don't see, like, for example, you don't see Arkansas competing against Georgia in a debate team SEC tournament or a math contest between Arkansas and Georgia in the SEC. That don't happen because conferences are not based upon academics. And they keep throwing that academic crap out there because that's the only thing they got to hide behind. Because all these other teams that are really good in football, they feel somewhat emasculated, in my opinion.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. And the thing that I'm like, the Big Ten's always like, you got to have AAU to get accepted, and Nebraska isn't AAU. Yeah, but when we accepted them, they were AAU.
Well, Notre Dame,
okay, but if that's still a stipulation and they drop it, then you're laying a precedent that anybody can gain AAU, get to the Big Ten, and then drop it.
Well, so they're trying to get Notre Dame.
Stupid.
They're trying to get Notre Dame in for about 50 years now, and Notre Dame's never been AAU. Ever.
Go look that up, because I did that the other day. I looked up AAU status and Big Ten qualifications, and they said, I don't know it word for word, but what it basically said was, yes, a team needs AAU status to be accepted into the Big Ten. The only exception would be made for Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Then that's not a requirement.
Exactly. I mean, why is Notre Dame an exception to the rule? That's why Notre Dame catches so much hell. It ain't even Notre Dame's fault. People put these things out there about Notre Dame themselves and make Notre Dame look elite.
That's actually pretty fun. I mean, seriously, how is it Notre Dame's fault that the Big Ten literally has it in their bylaws? You have to be an AAU member to get accepted to the Big Ten. The only exception being Notre Dame. That's not Notre Dame's fault. They did that. It's not like Notre Dame forced the Big Ten to put that in there.
Well, a lot of people don't realize the history between Notre Dame and the Big Ten. Notre Dame actually tried to join the Big Ten twice back in the early part of the 20th century. Back in the 1930s and the 1960s, Notre Dame tried to join the Big Ten. The Big Ten turned them down. Now, fast forward to now, in the 90s, they tried to get Notre Dame to join Penn State. Notre Dame turned them down. In the early 2000s, they tried again to get Notre Dame. So it's been tick for tack. Big Ten turned them down twice. Notre Dame's turned them down twice. Y'all are even now. So join the conference, Notre Dame. Just go ahead, bro. Just join the conference.
And I do think they will join a conference. I just want to ask you, which way do you think this thing goes? I think there's two options. Number one, obviously, they join the Big Ten, big time money. Number two, what we talked about earlier, which is starting to gain traction, the more people that I talk to, is even Notre Dame boards were saying that Notre Dame was talking to the ACC seriously about joining full-time. So the thinking that I'm hearing from Notre Dame boards and a bunch of other people that I talk to is Notre Dame wants to join the ACC, and NBC wants to pick up the exclusive rights to the ACC. Now, the teams that we listed, Clemson, North Carolina, Virginia, and Florida State, and maybe even two more, still probably leave to the SEC. But you bring in Notre Dame and NBC, and that will attract others like West Virginia, Oklahoma State, Iowa State, some of those teams out Midwest. But point blank, which way do you think this goes? Do you think that they actually do choose the Big Ten, or do you think that NBC's in their ear and like, no, we want the ACC rights, go with the ACC, and that's what happens?
I think Notre Dame is just playing a waiting game. They're the only team that can say no right now. Everybody else, if they get an invitation somewhere, they got to take it. But Notre Dame, they can say no right now to anybody.
Yeah.
But eventually down the road, I think that's going to change. If they don't hurry up and make a decision and join a conference, they could get left out. So they might ought to think about that down the road. But it's a hard question because there's so many benefits for Notre Dame to stay independent. There's benefits for them to go to the ACC and go to the Big Ten. If they go to the Big Ten, now the Big Ten, I was thinking they might have brought USC in for one reason, is to maybe lure Notre Dame into the Big Ten, because Notre Dame and USC, as you know, have a long-standing rivalry. And at that point, those two teams could be in a conference together and make scheduling a lot easier for Notre Dame if they were to join the Big Ten with USC.
I've made videos about that exact subject, and I would not doubt it if the talks, whatever you want to call it, between Notre Dame and the Big Ten right now go beyond that. Okay, Notre Dame, we already brought in USC, one of your yearly rivals. You can play them in conference now. You're saying no, but what if we bring in Stanford? What if we bring in Stanford and Navy? Then all three of your annual rivalries are now in the Big Ten. That would not surprise me at all.
Stanford would be a nice little kicker too. As you know, Notre Dame already has long-standing rivalries with Michigan State and Purdue. So,
yep, and a decent one with Michigan too.
Yeah, the Michigan thing is on again, off again. They play each other for a little while, and then they don't.
I think with that rivalry, it's more like make it more valuable by not having them play each other as much. It's a great rivalry.
Yeah,
it gets big time numbers when they do play.
That's
but
right.
I think they're smart about that, and they make sure to space it out to make it a little bit more valuable when it actually does happen. So that's how I think that goes around.
Notre Dame were to join the ACC, that would change a lot of things, a lot of perspectives, and it would save the ACC, in my opinion.
And I think that also is attractive to Notre Dame, because whether Notre Dame fans want to admit this or not, Notre Dame wants to be recognized as something. The big dog at something. If Notre Dame goes into the ACC,
that's right,
and they bring in NBC, and NBC gets the exclusive TV rights from now till the end of college football, even if the ACC doesn't last forever, what people can say about Notre Dame is they saved the ACC. And if you don't think that doesn't matter to Notre Dame, you are fooling yourself. That absolutely, they would carry that feather in their hat proudly.
It's already happened before in the past with other teams. Florida State was invited to the SEC back when they invited Arkansas and South Carolina. Florida State and Miami both turned down the SEC and joined the ACC because they wanted an easier road to a national championship. And Notre Dame may see that as well.
Exactly.
Hell, Notre Dame's first year in the ACC, when they let them in for that 1 year because of COVID, they made the ACC title game. And it gave Notre Dame fans something to look forward to. And I think they got a taste of that. And they're like, hey, just because we lose a couple of regular season games, we can still shoot for something. We can still shoot for a conference title instead of just being ass out for the rest of the year.
Yeah, exactly. And what you just mentioned, I'm thinking about the playoffs. I think the playoffs is the root of all of this. I think all these decisions are being made because of playoff expansion, and even the SEC and the Big Ten coming together, whatever that magical number is. I don't know what it is, but whatever it is, and then they split off. It's because of this playoff expansion thing. I know NIL is part of it. Yes, I realize that. But I think the main driving factor to all this change that we're seeing is they're trying to figure out the best road for everybody to get to these expanded playoffs. I don't know if it's going to be the 12 team with the bye week. A lot of people like the straight up 16 with home playoff games, or 8 with home playoff games. I don't know. That's another thing we need to talk about. One thing that I don't like about college football, look, if they're going to take some stuff away from us, give us some stuff that we want. Give us some stuff that we need. We need college football home playoff games. Uh-oh, I think he dropped. That's all right. It happens. But my point was, and if he hops back on, I'll put him back on. My point was, we need home playoff games, guys. I mean, if you look at the NFL, the MLB, the NHL, the NBA, all pro sports, if you don't watch the regular season, you're going to catch a few of the playoff games. I am not a hockey guy, not by a long shot. But whenever the NHL playoffs roll around, I'm watching just because of the home atmosphere. Why college football hasn't started home playoff games for college football, I have no idea. I mean, could you imagine the atmospheres of some of these home playoff games? I mean, Alabama would host a few. Ohio State would host a few. Clemson would host a few. Look, I'm a West Virginia fan, but I live about 20 minutes from Clemson. Clemson has a playoff game. Excuse me, I just ate, by the way. Even if I can't get tickets to the playoff game, I'm going to find a way at least into the atmosphere, and I'm doing a live show. Yes, that is happening. So I don't know what a good reason to not have home playoff games in college football will be. I can't think of any. None. College football with Jonathan Lewis. Thank you for the $2 super chat. Sorry I wasn't able to get it to it earlier. We were kind of talking. We got into it. Nebraska isn't AAU, lost it in 2011. That is correct, sir. The thing that we were talking about AAU with the Big Ten was one of their stipulations is in order to get accepted into the Big Ten, you must have AAU. But apparently, you don't need it to stay in the Big Ten because, like the Super Chat just said, they lost it in 2011 almost immediately. I think they were in the Big Ten like not even a year. Maybe it was a year. I don't know. It wasn't very long. And they lost AAU. Okay. No problem. You get to stay. So that stipulation has got to go. And seriously, go look up AAU status and Big Ten stipulations to, accept somebody as a member. AAU is in there, and then accept Notre Dame. Notre Dame is the extension. So just get rid of it because it doesn't make any sense. Number one, Notre Dame literally is the exception. So why is it a rule? And then the second thing, you can drop it after you join. So Big Ten, just stop. You're not fooling anybody. That's not anything. So I don't know why that's a big deal. I really don't. Here's what I think will happen before we get off here. I do think that the SEC will pick off some teams from the ACC. The four teams that they're talking about, Clemson, North Carolina, Virginia, and Florida State, that's going to happen. Maybe they pick off two more. Right now, the SEC has two sets of four, so they're at 16. If they go to 20, the next four, Clemson, Florida State, North Carolina, and Virginia, right? The next four, if they go to 24, West Virginia, Virginia Tech, Miami, and Louisville. Louisville, I think, interchangeable with Oklahoma State. So, as a West Virginia fan, we're not in the first four in. That's Clemson, Florida State, North Carolina, and Virginia. We're not on the first four in, but we're on the next four in. But the thing is, what if Notre Dame comes into the ACC with NBC money, and NBC gets the exclusive TV rights with Notre Dame, which immediately stabilizes it. And as long as they have competitive pay that can be compared to the SEC and the Big Ten, West Virginia can go there as well. So I'm not worried about West Virginia's future. We're going to be fine no matter what. I just don't know what road we're going to take. Are we going to take a pit stop in the ACC and then the SEC calls us? Or are we going to bide our time in the Big 12 and then the ACC calls us? I don't know. Or does the Big 12 expand to a point and get a better TV deal and we stay in the Big 12? See what I'm saying? Doesn't matter what we do. We're going to be fine. It seems like Washington State, Oregon State, Cal, teams in the Big 12 to worry about would be Cincinnati, UCF, maybe a Houston, possibly TCU, Texas Tech, although I would have Texas Tech more safe than not. Iowa State would have something to worry about. Kansas State would have something to worry about. Kansas, because this is strictly football, not basketball. There are a lot of teams that aren't safe no matter what. They need a specific road. So, for example, like your Texas Tech, your Iowa State, your Oklahoma State. Well, I think Oklahoma State would be good no matter what, so I'll leave them out. Maybe a TCU. I think they need the Big 12. I think the Big 12, they want the Big 12 to expand because they're not going to the ACC and they're not going to the SEC. So they need to stay in the Big 12 and have it expand. The problem with the Big 12 for West Virginia has always been travel. Now that the Big 12 is trying to go out west and get Pac-12 members, Utah, Colorado, Arizona State, possibly Oregon and Washington, that's fine and dandy for the Big 12. But for West Virginia, that's horrible. That's bad news. West Virginia is number one in the new Big 12, not counting Oklahoma and Texas, in revenue and fan base size. But we are dead last in profit. Dead freaking last because of our travel expenses. So if you add on those teams from the Pac-12, like I said in my video that I made earlier, we might actually end up in the red, like literally losing money every single year we're in the Big 12. So that's not good for us. So if we stay in the Big 12 and they do add those teams from the Pac-12, they better balance it by getting teams out of the ACC because we need more travel partners on the east side. Seriously. Thank you, Dwayne Bohr. I'm assuming that's how I pronounce your name. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly. Thank you for the $5 super chat. He says, in game, question mark, 3 24 super conference combined to form 2 mega conferences. Let me make sure I read this correctly. He's saying 3 24 team super conferences combine to form 2 mega conferences comprised of 4 9-team divisions. Divisions comprise old conference rivals, i.e. Pac-8, Southwest Conference. I get what you're saying. So basically you're saying that 3 super conferences will form 24 teams each. And then those will combine. So I'm guessing one of those super conferences gets divided between one mega and another mega. And then both of the mega conferences will have 4 9-team divisions and 4 9-team divisions. So the end game in this, according to Dwayne Bohr, is Big Ten has 19 division, 9-team division, 9-team division, so 36. So I'm guessing you're saying the end game is 36 and 36. That's pretty cool. I don't know if they're going to go with what's the math on that? 62 teams. I don't know. I hope so because that would include most of the brands you would want to see. It would keep a lot of parity in college football. I like this take. I'm just not sure if that's what's going to happen. I would go with, if I was going to go that route, if I would go with 64. I think 64, just the number itself would make more sense. But I get what you're saying. Basically, you're saying right now we're in a stepping stone. There's going to be 3 major conferences. So only one conference out of the ACC, Big 12, and Pac-12 is going to exist. Whether it's the Big 12 takeover, ACC takeover, or Pac-12, only one of those. So then we'll have the Big 10. We'll say Big 12, okay, just for the sake of argument. Big 10, Big 12, and SEC. And then the Big 12 will be split between the Big 10 and the SEC. And both the Big 10 and the SEC will have 4 9-team divisions. Sort of does make sense. And I like that you broke it down into steps. That kind of made it sound more legitimate. I like the way you broke down the steps. Not just any Uncle Lou, but the Uncle Lou. Thank you for the $5 super chat. He says, Field and Stream magazine said Chapel Hill is getting a Dave and Buster's and a Goodwill. My interest was not piqued until the Goodwill part. Now I'm interested. A Dave and Buster's and a Goodwill distribution center, so they are going to the Big Ten. Well, there you go. You heard it. Chapel Hill is getting a Dave and Buster's, but not just a Dave and Buster's, a Goodwill distribution center, and that made it appetizing, appealing to the Big Ten. North Carolina off to the Big Ten, and it's all thanks to Dave and Buster's and the Goodwill distribution center. Well done, North Carolina. Man, if things really worked out that way, or that's how things happened, we'd all be in a lot of trouble, wouldn't we? A lot of trouble. But seriously, don't throw shade on a Goodwill distribution center. Sometimes they have some good stuff. Sometimes, mostly not, but sometimes they do. I've found some good stuff over there, and it's fairly cheap too. Donated a few stuff there too. What about? I do worry about Georgia Tech. I've heard a lot of people saying that they would get blocked out of the SEC. I've heard that they back to the AAU argument. My gosh. I drew myself back into this. I tried. Anyways, people say that they have AAU status. That would make them appealing to the Big Ten. I just don't see any value in Georgia Tech. North Carolina, you're fine. I think North Carolina Not even counting the Dave and Buster's and the Goodwill distribution center. Not even counting that. That's just icing on the cake. Not even counting that. I think North Carolina would be appealing to the Big Ten and the SEC. Of course, they're already talking to the SEC, and I'm pretty sure that North Carolina has AAU status because apparently that still means something, even though it really doesn't. I'm going to just stop dropping that from my conversation because, in my opinion, it doesn't mean anything. But for technicality, they're appealing both to the Big Ten and the SEC. They're fine. So if you go down the ACC, of course, the 4 teams that they're talking to, North Carolina, they would be appealing to both the Big Ten and the SEC. They're talking to the SEC. Clemson, I don't think they have AAU status, so probably wouldn't be appealing to the Big Ten. Definitely the SEC. Virginia does have AAU. They could go either way. Florida State does not. They would be in the SEC. Virginia Tech, AAU. They could go to the Big Ten. But I think Virginia Tech would also be appealing to the SEC. Pitt, AAU status, maybe appealing to the Big Ten. I'm not sure, but not appealing to the SEC. So if this were to happen, Pitt's only hope would be the Big Ten, and I don't think that Penn State would want them. I think Penn State would throw a big-time hissy fit if the Big Ten extended an invitation to Pitt. So I'm not sure what Pitt's best option is for the ACC to continue to exist. Syracuse, I think they have AAU status. Great basketball program, but their football over 3 million fans identify as a Syracuse football fan, and yet they can't fill a 50,000-seat stadium that has a roof. So you can't even use weather as an excuse, Syracuse fans. There's over 3 million of you, number one football fan base, not counting Notre Dame in the ACC. That absolutely blew my mind. Why? Because their freaking football stadium is never filled. And they don't have the excuse of, well, we got to share a stadium with the NFL like Pitt likes to use. You don't. You have your own stadium. Why can you not fill it? There's over 3 million of you. You should be able to fill it over like 500 times over. So Syracuse, I don't think they're appealing to anybody. Syracuse is lucky that they're in the ACC right now. If the ACC were to go under, I think Syracuse would go to the Big East, which they would be fine in basketball, and they would drop their high school team in football anyway. So that would be your future if the ACC goes under. So if Syracuse wants to be part of big boy football, you better hope that the ACC continues. Same goes with Boston College, although I don't think Boston College would go to the Big East because their basketball program is crap right now. You talk about a team that's lucky to be in a Power 5 conference. Boston College. Because the ACC accepted Boston College because, they're near the Boston TV market. Except nobody in Boston cares. Anybody in New England or the Boston area, they only care about the Red Sox, the Bruins, the Celtics, and the Patriots. That's it. So one of the ACC's biggest big mistake, was taking Boston College over West Virginia. Oh my gosh, I bet they're kicking themselves in the rear end for that one. That was, maybe there's an argument for Pitt over West Virginia, even though our fan base is bigger than Pitt, and West Virginia actually carries the city of Pittsburgh over Pitt. Now, there's more Penn State fans in the city of Pittsburgh, but West Virginia carries Pittsburgh over Pitt, and we carry Washington, D.C. But, they have over 1 million in their fan base, so maybe a little bit of an argument. Virginia Tech actually does have a bigger fan base than West Virginia, so they definitely would have an argument. Miami, bigger, they have an argument. But Boston College and Syracuse, they did not have an argument, and I truly bet that the ACC is kicking themselves in the rear end for inviting Syracuse and Boston College over West Virginia. That's my opinion. What would you think about that? Can you hear me, bud?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, I was saying how
I don't know if you got my message or not, but the fire alarm went off in our building over here.
Oh no, Well, I did, but I haven't read it yet. I'll read it after the show. But what I was saying is the ACC is probably kicking themselves in the rear end right now for taking, especially Boston College and Syracuse over West Virginia, and probably even Pitt over West Virginia.
Well, I didn't know this, but Pitt is like the #1 research institution in the ACC. So if someone's looking for an academic thing, Pittsburgh has that. So,
but as far as like fan base and TV numbers, even the city of Pittsburgh itself, West Virginia has a bigger fan base than Pitt does.
Yeah, of course.
Penn State has the biggest fan base in the city of Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh,
but comparing Pitt and West Virginia.
Pittsburgh is like Miami, sort of. They have to be really, really, really good in order to get the fans in. They're fair weather fans, sort of like USC fans. Pittsburgh is a Steelers town. We all know that. Miami's a Dolphins town when they're good, but those are pro city towns with big time franchises that have won championships and stuff. So that's why it's hard for teams like Pittsburgh to really excel.
Well, even when they were ACC champs last year, I think the only time that they filled the stadium to capacity was when they played Clemson. Now, another big problem that Pitt has is their tickets. Dude, I have tickets to the Backyard Brawl, upper deck seats, $300.
Really?
Yes. Absolutely ridiculous. Guys, Pitt has so many wrong things going on with their football program. Number one, they don't even carry their own city. Penn State's #1 in the city of Pittsburgh, and West Virginia's #2. So there's your first problem, Pitt. The second problem is you share a stadium with an NFL team. I don't care who you are. It is super, super difficult to get a college atmosphere in an NFL stadium. It just is. Ask Miami. It is. The third thing is your freaking ticket prices. Guys, you got to do something about that. So what Pitt needs to do, and I've heard, there's land issues. There's not enough land on campus or whatever. You need to do, and so does Miami. Both of you guys need to build, even if it's not on campus, as close to campus as possible, a football stadium. For Pitt, I would say 45,000, maybe 50,000 would be more than enough for Pitt fans. For Miami, I'd probably go up to 65, 70,000.
The problem with Miami having a stadium on campus is I think it's a commuter university.
Yeah.
Where their campus is not really all together. It's spread out around the southern part of Florida.
Well, I would say an area, close to it. Like, I think Miami would have done better if they somehow could have renovated the Orange Bowl, because the days of the Orange Bowl aren't that long ago. I mean, they're still in the past, distant past, but it's not that long. I mean, even in 2001, when they won their last national championship, they were still in the Orange Bowl. When you think of Miami, you think of the Orange Bowl.
Yeah. The only bad thing about a lot of these old traditional stadiums is the neighborhoods around them have went downhill, and the neighborhood around the Orange Bowl is in pretty bad shape. It's not a very nice area. It's a lot of crime down there, so that might be the only issue with the Orange Bowl.
Well, but it's one of those things where it was established, though. I get the location issue. I get the crime rate issue. I mean, it's probably worse than most places, but that happens, all across the United States. Just something you got to deal with. My point with the Orange Bowl is Miami was really freaking good in the Orange Bowl. When they played in the Orange Bowl, they had home field advantage for sure. When they play in, what is it called now, Hard Rock Stadium, there ain't no home field advantage at all. Number one, they can't even feel it. Number two, there's no energy there. With the Orange Bowl, you felt, and I've been to the Orange Bowl once. It's I don't know if it's torn down now, but if it isn't, you need to at least go look at it. It might be. But I'm telling you, that thing, it was old, but it was still intimidating. They would say whenever Miami was in its heyday and the crowd was rocking, the upper deck would literally sway side to side. And we're not talking about two upper decks that are facing each other. we're talking about a semi-horseshoe. So you're talking about a whole horseshoe that's swaying like this. Now, I don't think that would meet up to building codes these days, so maybe a swaying upper deck isn't the way to go. But they could have renovated it and still had that amazing home field advantage. They got to do something because right now, Miami, I mean, they still have a strong brand, but they don't have a strong home field for sure.
Like I said, the problem with those teams that's in those major cities like that are NFL cities is that if they're not winning at least 10 games a year, people are just not going to show up. You have that problem with UCLA too and USC out in LA. The fans just don't show up, man. They'll use the excuse like, oh, well, we got so much more things that we can do to entertain us. Well, that just means you don't take football seriously enough. That's not an excuse. Oh, we got beaches. Come on, man. Give me a break. You think that me or Chris Petrie couldn't find something else to do on a Saturday besides watch football? Yeah. Sure we could. And there's all sorts of things you can do in Alabama. You can go hiking, you can go fishing, and there's all sorts of great lakes around here. It's just an excuse they use because they just don't have the passion in those big cities.
Yep, and I agree with you 100%. What if it's the other way around, though? Because, seriously, if you look at how they did, and then whenever they moved over to whatever it was called at the time, that's when Miami started to decline. So it seemed like that maybe, I'm not going to say a stadium caused their demise. I'm not going to say that. That's not a real thing.
Man, it's got a ghost in it.
But I would say, you never know. But I would say, the fan support dwindled big time. And, I mean, let's face it, these college kids, they need fan support. Miami's always recruited at a high level. I mean, even though they're not in the Orange Bowl, they're still top 25 every year, sometimes top 20, sometimes top 15. Mario Cristobal is recruiting at a very high level right now. So the recruiting's been there. I just think one has affected the other. So how to fix it is like you have to fix something. I think the easiest, if it's truly that way, to where one is affecting or has affected the other, I think the easiest thing to fix would be the stadium thing. I mean, it wouldn't be the cheapest,
maybe for Miami,
but give them a home field advantage.
Yeah, maybe for Miami. I think that regardless of what Pittsburgh does, that the Steelers have won so many championships that it's going to be hard for them to overcome that.
Well, even West Virginia fans, most of them are Pittsburgh Steelers fans.
Yeah,
basically, we don't have a professional team. So for the NFL, you have the Bengals, the Browns, the Steelers, and the Washington team. What are they called now? The Commanders. And I went with the Bengals. And so here's my life. Think about this. West Virginia in college football, Cincinnati Reds in college, not college, but MLB, Cincinnati Bengals in the NFL, and then the New York Knicks in the NBA. And the reason I became a New York Knicks fan was I wasn't a fan of really any NBA team. And then the 1998 playoffs happened, and they were the first 8 seed ever to get to the finals, and that's how I became. I was young, impressionable, don't hold it against me. But that's my lifetime. I have seen no championships, none. And this past year, the Bengals got to the Super Bowl, just like West Virginia has gotten to the national championship or one game away from the national championship. And, of course, they lose. That has been my life, man.
Is that when the Knicks had John Stark and Patrick Ewing?
Not Stark. I'm trying to think about Ewing. I know they had Latrell Sprewell at the time.
And I know Stark, man. He used to give Michael Jordan hell.
I don't think Stark was on that, but I think Ewing was still on there.
I was a big Chicago Bulls fan.
Yeah.
And the damn Knicks, man, they used to give us hell.
That was actually after Jordan retired, and the whole Knicks Bulls thing was kind of fizzled out. Actually, it was more Knicks Heat at the time, the New York Knicks and the Miami Heat. That was a big rivalry at the time. So, but that's how I became a fan. But the point was, like, I have seen no championships in my lifetime, none. I came close this year, and I've came close several times with West Virginia. Unlike what most people think, we've been close. We've actually been to a national championship in my lifetime. Just haven't seen it. How many have you seen in your lifetime?
A lot.
A lot. You've lost count. I
The
don't have
highest,
one, and you lost count.
West
That's not
Virginia.
fair.
West Virginia is the highest win total team in football without a national championship. They're
Yeah.
15th overall, and there's teams below them that's won national championships.
Yep.
So West Virginia, like you said, in 1988, I was about 13 or 14. I'm sort of dating myself. They should have won that game against Notre Dame. That's not making excuses, but if they'd had Major Harris, they would have won that game. That's
Yep.
just the bottom line, man. Major Harris probably should have won the Heisman Trophy that year over Tim Brown, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And
That's a close one, though.
then in 93, I think that was a missed opportunity, as you said. There's been times West Virginia has been there, and they just don't get the respect they deserve sometimes. I think it's just because of their location. And people, just like with Alabama, people try to look down on you because you're from not so populated area.
Hey, look at this. Hold on. I'll get back to Super Chat. This Pitt fan, John Christophic, I'm guessing Pitt has 9 national championships. Last one, 1976. Nobody cares. Moving on. Gee, like how old were you the last time Pitt won a national championship? I wasn't born. Were you born?
I was about 3 or 4 years old.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go.
The earliest thing I remember about Pitt was back in the 80s when they had Dan Marino. And
yes,
I think they beat Georgia.
That's
they beat
when
Georgia
won
in the Sugar Bowl, but they lost
Yeah.
a game, I think maybe to Penn State or something in the regular season. But the year they won the national championship back in 1977, they actually had to share that glory with the Pittsburgh Steelers because the Steelers were winning back-to-back titles then. And that's what I'm talking about.
Hold on, I got 2 super chats I got to catch up with. Hold on. Blake Phillips, $2 super chat. Appreciate you, bud. Big 12 should offer to Oregon, join now or no, Dominoes. Fair point. And then Solo Road, $2 super chat. Pitt beating West Virginia in 2006. That one had to sting. That was 2007, actually. And yes, thanks for bringing that up.
Oregon and Washington have a unique opportunity, too. If they were to join the Big 12, they could effectively save the Big 12 and the Pac-12 because they could bring the rest of the Pac-12 with them and just y'all could form this huge merger and y'all could own basically most of the western side of the United States. And on top of that, you would have West Virginia and Central Florida on the east side. So y'all would be a coast-to-coast conference that could reckon with the Big Ten.
I actually addressed that earlier. The only thing that if we do that is the Big 12 would need to balance on the east side because right now travel is already a headache for West Virginia. We're number 1 in revenue, but dead last in profit because of travel expenses. If you only add on the west part of the Big 12, that only hurts West Virginia. So
Right.
For West Virginia, Cincinnati, UCF, fine. Add from the west. That's fine. But you need to also add some travel partners on the east side, and that's where the ACC comes into play. And that's why this is a big-time tug-of-war right now. Honestly, I think the Pac-12 is done. I think this is going to be a tug-of-war between the Big 12 and the ACC.
Y'all do have Cincinnati, too. I forgot about them.
Yes.
And
UCF doesn't help West Virginia. They don't.
Could,
measure West Virginia or Morgantown to Orlando and then Morgantown to Ames, it's about the same. So the only team that has helped West Virginia travel right now is Cincinnati. And that's still every other year because you're not going to get a home game every year.
Y'all could invite like Memphis, maybe, to even things out a little bit.
Yeah, that would be maybe Memphis and then a few teams on the ACC. Yeah.
Memphis has got FedEx money too. FedEx is located in Memphis.
See, a lot of people, here's the problem. A lot of people think that I've been preaching. That's the word they like to use. That's it. Preaching
Amen.
West Virginia to the ACC. That's not it at all. Number one, like we said at the beginning of the video, when we say sources, that's what we're being told. And if they don't want us to use their name, we're not going to. You can trash talk us all you want. We're not telling you. We're not burning that bridge. I want what's best for West Virginia, okay? So if it's to stay in the Big 12 and then the Big 12 to pick off from the ACC to give us travel partners, then yes, let's stay in the Big 12. If the best thing for West Virginia is to jump to the ACC with Notre Dame and stabilize it and bring some teams from the Big 12, by all means, do so. If the best decision is to stand pat for right now in the Big 12 and wait on the ACC's call, then that's what we need to do. I don't have a preference as long as we do the right thing for West Virginia. Whatever that is, do it.
Well, I just don't want to see these teams like Kansas State, Oregon State, Washington State, maybe even your team, West Virginia, to some degree. I don't want to see all these teams excluded because it takes away from the game, man. It takes away from the traditions and just the variety. You have so much variety with this many teams. It just aggravates me, man, to even think about it. I know I'm an Alabama fan. And I should be like, well, that's going to benefit the SEC. Yeah, but down the road, I really think it's going to hurt.
Yeah, but that's why I wanted to invite you on the show because even though some people might disagree with your opinion, you are a diehard Alabama fan. You are an SEC fan, but you also see things for the way they are. So, if you see something that's not right, even if it has something to do with the SEC, you say something about it. You're not just kissing that SEC rear end. That's not you.
Well, I feel like me and you are sort of alike in that we love the complete and whole game of college football.
Right.
I'm a fan of what's best for college football, not just Alabama, not just West Virginia. I want what's best for this entire sport to thrive and to keep some of the uniqueness about it and not go the way of the NFL. The NFL's got their own model they survive by. They only have 32 teams to think about.
Exactly. And that's why I made that comparison earlier. We like college football over the NFL. And one of the reasons, not the only reason, one of the reasons is the variety that you get in college football. If you start shrinking it down, it's basically NFL junior.
Exactly.
And that's what we don't want. We don't want that. Even if you think you do, you don't.
I mean, you'd actually be a version of the USFL, to be honest with you.
Yeah, exactly.
Probably a little more popular, but.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about you, man, but I got to get off here and get some stuff done. But I feel bad that you had to drop for a minute. Things happen. I understand. We're definitely going to do this again. I had a lot of fun. You just keep me up to date on your schedule, and we'll definitely do this again.
Yeah.
But tell everybody where they can find you and all that
what
stuff.
What it was is a firearm went off in this building, and everybody had to go outside. So maybe next time I won't. What it was is we were just so hot, man. We set the building on fire today.
Yeah, we were. The show was getting too hot.
That's right.
Yeah.
But you can find me at Outlaw of College Football on YouTube, and I am also on Twitter at OCF Productions.
And it's not JCP, it's
JPC.
JPC.
That's right, because JCP sort of sounds like JCPenney's.
That's probably why I put that in there. I was probably thinking JCPenney for whatever reason. I made the brain connection. You know how it is.
That's right.
But absolutely, man, I appreciate you coming on. It was awesome. We're going to have some other good guests on here, but me and you, we're going to do it again. All right, buddy?
That's right, brother.
All right, I'll talk to you in a little while, okay?
All right, check you later.
All right, bud. JPC, not JCP as in JCPenney, but JPC, Outlaw College Football. He has some great content over there as well. Go check him out. I'm subscribed to him. Go check him out. I got to head out of here, guys. I got some other stuff I got to do around the house. But if you come across Gonna Blue Dude and you're not subscribed, if you're a college football fan, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. If you're not, don't even worry about it because that's all we do here. You'll be bored. But definitely, it is a must subscribe for those of you that are a college football fan because that is all I do all day, every day. Literally, when you're done with this live show, go check out my channel. You'll see all day, every day. This is what I do. I live it and I breathe it. Thank you to all the people that super chat, all the people that hit the like button, everybody that comment. Even when you troll, I still appreciate it. So instead of having my live show tomorrow, I did it today. So you guys have a great extended weekend. Even if you got to work tomorrow, it's okay. Have a great extended weekend. And we will see you probably on, I'm thinking about doing one on Monday. Usually it's Wednesdays and Friday, but I think I'm going to do one on Monday. I think I have a guest lined up. So you'll see who that's going to be. So next time, Monday. But in the meantime, have a great weekend, and we'll see you then.